Is Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett.
Minister, people for profit have always opposed the tax that was imposed on the family home because it's an unjust and regressive form of taxation. But we think there's an added case given the role that vulture funds, cuckoo funds, buy-to-rent property investors, whatever name you want to give them, who are now controlling and dominating our housing sector, driving up rents and house prices to unaffordable levels, to have a real property tax. Not one on family homes, but on these people who are wrecking the housing market.
As we've debated on a number of occasions already, these funds, this capital is leading to the supply overall of more homes within our country, and does have to be seen in conjunction with, for example, a very strong public housing programme. I know, Deputy, you will want us to be building more public housing, but we are for this year going to build well in excess of 6,000 public houses through our local authorities and through our approved housing bodies. So if you look at the tax that is in place at the moment, the way in which these companies are taxed is they are taxed when the income that they have is redistributed to those who invest in these funds. So it's liable for tax at either 20 or 25%, depending on whether it's a REIT or an IRA, if they're taxed in the same way a pension is. When the income is distributed out of the fund, it's at that point the income is taxed. Do I have any proposals at the moment to change that taxation again in the future? I have changed this taxation regime in the past, dependent on concerns that myself and my officials have had in relation to efforts that would be made to minimise tax. And that option is always open to me to make further changes in how they're taxed if such issues are presented to me again. But that is the main reason in which I would be looking to change taxes for those funds at the moment. And the reason why is ultimately they do play a role into the supply of more homes within our country. I appreciate how much they are contested, the political debate around them, but it fundamentally boils down to, do we want the savings that exist in other parts of Europe and other parts of the world to play a role in building more homes in Ireland? And I believe those savings do have a role to play in more homes being built in our country, and that is why a stable taxation regime around them, such as we've had in place over the last number of years, I do believe is appropriate.
You see, Minister, sounds good, but it's just not what's happening on the ground, right? And we're going to just have to blow this fantasy out of the water. In Dunleary-Rathdown, as I pointed out on a number of occasions, last year, we just got the figures, 0 council houses built, 0. Next year, 5. 5, right? But there's a lot of construction going on in Dunleary-Rathdown. Drive around it. There's flipping SHDs going up all over the place. Private, build-to-rent developments, €2,200 a month if you're lucky. Now you see, there is an opportunity cost here, if you like, to use economic jargon. If all the construction workers are building unaffordable, profit-driven developments, they're not building council houses. And the facts are clear on the ground, right? The council's delivering nothing. When you talk about AHBs, who's building for the AHBs? The same property investors, charging a fortune, right? So this is nonsense, right? We need to stop these people wrecking our market and build the affordable and public housing.
McNeill.
The social housing list in Dunleary is being addressed through AHBs and through the provision of housing generally. And I note that my colleague from Dunleary objects to SHDs, but I was in Coolanore as one in particular in Glenageary that he raised in the House a number of weeks ago. He objects to one down the road as well. But I was in Coolanore on Saturday and I saw all the houses and apartments where hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 people are living with their families, with a beautiful small playground for kids there. And you raised it a couple of weeks ago and you're objecting to another set of apartments that are being built 500 metres up the Road. I would like to see housing developed right across Dún Laoghaire for the people who need it. I know the families, as you do, Deputy Boyd Barrett, who need to move into different types of accommodation right across our constituency. There's a finite amount of land that can be developed. There's a sea on one side and it is an urban area. It has to be built. It has to be built upwards to accommodate a growing population of people who are living here for a long time, people who want to come here, work here, develop our economy. And it's just not housing here, not housing there, but solve the housing crisis, Minister, solve the housing government, just not on your territory.
Minister.
Deputy, as we've already heard there from the exchange that has just taken place there are more homes being built in your constituency. It's not for me to say that. Deputy McNeill is more of an expert than I am in relation to it. Those homes are being built, and it is part of more homes that are being built in our country overall. We know more needs to be built. But if you look at where we stand at the moment, over 20,000 homes delivered last year, over 30,000 homes in the planning process, over 30,000 homes commenced, and over 35,000 homes in the planning process. That is what is happening. They're homes that are being built. And if you look at what is happening from the social housing programme that we have here in place, we have a record budget in place now to deliver those homes. And out of all of the homes that you're being built across the constituency that you represent, is it not also the case that a share of those are being set aside for public use?
Minister.
They're going to deliver more public and social housing for families who need it?
Deputy Boyd Barrett.
This is an interesting new phenomenon, my constituency colleague being sent in to mark me on this, a new tactic on the part of Fine Gael. Interesting, but look, it doesn't matter,
setting the
right?
facts straight,
it doesn't
Deputy,
matter.
as you're well able to
See,
do.
I have a public office where people come in who are homeless and can't afford stuff. You don't. Right, and I have to
You're
deal
right,
with the
I don't use state funds for that. I
with the
meet them at my own
being
cost.
thrown off the housing list.
People at my own cost. I don't use state funds for things like that.
And the rents in the places that you're talking about are €2,200. They're not affordable for the people on the housing list, and that is why people are ending up in homeless accommodation. And there's 5,000 families on the various housing lists waiting 15 to 20 years because all the construction workers are building developments for profit. We get a tiny proportion of those at a huge cost, but meanwhile those construction workers are not down at Changana Castle building on the public land, the public housing we need. They're not in putting the water infrastructure on the old Connor Road or up in Stepaside where we have public land where we should be building public housing.
Minister, please.
Deputy, there's nobody been sent in to mark anybody here. And it really, and Deputy...
Fair enough, it's all politics.
And Deputy, I would have thought, given your prowess as a public speaker and the way in which you tackle me regularly, that you would be up for debate and discussion, as opposed to that, frankly, feigned outrage which you just indulge in us there. The Deputy is entirely, well, you appear to have recovered from it pretty quickly, Deputy, now. We are surely...
I come in here every week,
you do.
enraged by the housing crisis in my area, Pascal.
Can we let the Minister respond, please?
I would have thought you would welcome debate, and I would have thought that a perspective regarding what is happening in your own constituency can be legitimately given in this Dáil by a fellow TD who represents your own constituency as well. I am well aware of the level of housing need that is there. I'm well aware of the anxiety and trauma that it is inflicting upon so many.
Thank you, Minister.
But I simply make the case to you, in conclusion, Ceann Comhairle, that with the funding that we are putting in, we will and are seeing more public housing being built, and these funds that I know you're against play a role in particular, apartments and more apartments being delivered in our country.